Hi guys! In this series of video lessons, I will talk about my understanding of the process of compositing Octane render. At the beginning, I would like to give a few definitions of the processes that take place when rendering three-dimensional scenes. The rendering process is the process of creating a two-dimensional image from a three-dimensional scene. The image is built from various components during rendering. As a result of rendering, a single image can be obtained. A beauty groove is a final, fully assembled image render that includes all aspects of lighting, textures, shadows, reflections, and other effects, as well as a set of separate passages, each of which describes different elements of the scene. Individual passes are called AOV, arbitrary output variables. These are different components or elements of the image individually, in the form of separate layers. When rendering, each element of the scene, such as lighting, materials, reflection, refraction, depth of field, and others, is rendered as separate images or passages. These individual passes can be used for further processing and compositing in post-production. All passages can be divided into several categories. Beauty surface. These AOVs are passages that include the main elements of the image, such as lighting, color, reflection, refraction, radiation, and other important attributes of the scene surfaces. These passages represent the appearance of the final image. The light passages isolate the light coming from the various light sources in the scene. Light AOVs isolate sunlight, ambient lighting, and individual light sources by light identifiers. Aisles with information data contain additional auxiliary information about the scene. Object masking passages are passages that allow you to get information about various elements of the scene, such as objects, materials, and their components based on their identifiers. Let's consider what information the VI from the first category of the beauty space of I contains. Diffuse lighting shows all the light straight and not straight on diffuse materials in the scene. This is a combination of diffuse direct passage of light falling directly on the material and diffuse indirect passage, light reflecting from another object and falling on the material. Direct illumination includes only those light rays that fall directly from the light sources on the diffuse surfaces of the object, without taking into account reflected or refracted rays. This passage eliminates the effect of indirect light, reflective, and any other types of lighting, except for direct diffused light. Indirect lighting shows light that is first reflected from other sources and surfaces before reaching the current object. Unlike direct lighting, which only includes direct light from light sources, non-direct lighting focuses on lighting resulting from multiple reflections and light scattering in the scene. The reflection pass includes information about reflections on the surface of objects in the scene, ignoring other aspects of lighting and materials. The direct reflection pass includes information about direct reflections on the surfaces of objects. Direct reflections are reflections of light from light sources that fall on a surface without any intermediate interactions, such as scattering or refraction. The indirect reflection pass includes only those parts of the image that reflect reflection from surfaces that first reflected light from other objects and light sources, and then this light hit the current object. The refraction pass includes only those parts of the image that reflect the refraction of light through transparent or translucent materials, such as glass, water, plastic. Refraction occurs when light passes through materials with different densities, changing the direction of light propagation, which creates the effect of distortion of objects visible through these materials. The subsurface scattering pass includes information about subsurface light scattering. Subsurface scattering occurs when light penetrates a translucent material, scatters inside it, and exits from another point on the surface. The radiation passage isolates the light coming from self-luminous objects in the scene, including light sources. Let's consider what information the passages from the light AOV category contain. The general light passage includes all the light components of the scene, combining both direct and non-direct illumination from ambient light and individual light sources. In this example, there is ambient lighting and 3 light sources with different identifiers, which allows you to get information about the contribution of each light source in the scene. The passage of direct illumination includes only light that directly falls on the surface of objects from light sources, without taking into account indirect reflections or scattering. Light source identifiers allows you to get information about the direct illumination of each light source separately. This helps to fine-tune the intensity, color, or exclusion of specific light sources during compositing. The indirect lighting passageway turns on light that reflects off the surfaces of objects and then illuminates other objects. Indirect lighting includes reflection from surfaces, scattered light, and any other effects that do not occur directly from light sources. Let's look at what kind of information the SAE also contain from the category of information data. These passages contain additional data about objects in the scene. There are quite a lot of passages in this category. Here is an example of some of them. The environment occlusion pass displays the result of the environment occlusion effect. The shadow pass shows all the shadows of the first reflection created by various light sources in the scene. The data in both of these passages are already taken into account in the beauty or lighting passages, so they can be used if there is a need to enhance the effects of shadows or ambient occlusion. Passing depth along the z-axis can be useful for creating depth of field or fog effects. The wireframe passageway displays the triangulated geometry that Octane uses. Let's consider what kind of information the AOV contains from the category of object masking passages. Cryptomatte creates masks that are used to isolate all different objects or materials to correct the image during post-processing, color change, brightness adjustment, and so on. Custom allows you to isolate any components of the scene, such as individual materials, objects, or textures. The rendering layer is designed to isolate objects as well as their shadows and reflections. It allows you not only to isolate objects, but also to create passages for shadows and reflections only for these objects, so that they can be arranged in a new background. Octane compositing allows you to combine different passes to create the final image or video. At the same time, it is possible to control the parameters of each individual pass. Use masks to isolate and edit individual parts of the image. Perform color correction, adjust contrast, brightness, white balance, saturation, and other commands to improve the overall appearance of the image. Add visual effects such as glare, blur, vignette, sharpness, and others to make scenes more expressive and realistic. To work with the Octane Blender, the Octane Render Editor and the Octane Composite Editor are used. The Octane Render Editor specifies the necessary passes that are planned to be used in compositing. They are set in the Render Group node. In the Octane Composite Editor, the composite passes specified in the Octane Render Editor are executed. The Render Group node can contain up to 16 plugins. If there are more of them, then you can connect not a separate one, but a node of the render groups. So you can connect several render groups, each of which will contain a set of certain types of cryptomattes, information, noise-canceling passages, lighting passages, and so on. The Octane Composite Editor contains an output-out node of the output-out groups, which receives information from all the layers used, which in turn can be arranged in different groups of layers. Separate groups of layers are connected to the AOV output node, which can be represented as a separate finished composition of post-processing. There can be any number of such compositions. Let's see how to assemble the final finished image from the main passages in practice. In the settings of the visualization layers, I choose the option of working with the node tree and B. Next, I open the Octane Render Editor and the Octane Composite Editor. In the Octane Render IV Editor, I create a new node tree. You should also select this node tree in the Visualization Layers settings. Now the Render IV Group node does not contain connected AOV passages, so you can only view the Beauty passage and the Noise Cancelling passage. It should be remembered that in order to obtain a noise cancelling pass, it must first be activated. In this example, Beauty passages will be used, as well as passages of shadows and surrounding occlusion. For clarity, I will create two groups of nodes. I will connect Beauty passages to the first group, from which the final image is formed. To the second one, I will connect the shadow passages and the surrounding occlusions. Now in the Render IV Output node, you can view all connected passages. This is information about radiation in direct and indirect illumination, in direct and indirect reflection, refraction. Under surface scattering, shadows, and ambient occlusion. After the necessary passages are connected, we switch to the Octane Composite. In the Octane Composite Editor, I create a new node tree. You should also select this node tree in the Visualization Layers settings. Now it is possible to view all the information coming to the AOV Group Outlet node in the Pass Preview list. Currently, no information is being sent to this node. It is necessary to create an output and be node. This node can be considered as a composition, containing all the processed passes and effects. In this node, all passages are arranged using all available options. For convenience and more flexibility, I will arrange the passages together using groups of layers. Therefore, I will create a group of layers and connect the first node of the Render AV. In this node, you need to select one of the passes that was specified in the editor in the Render Group node. The diffuse passage, as we know, consists of direct and indirect. Therefore, I will connect these two nodes to a group of layers, and in order to add them up, you need to select the Add Blending mode. Working with layers is similar to working in Photoshop. I will create another layer in the Output and VI node to mix the direct and indirect reflection passages. Duplicate a group of layers and select the necessary passages from the list. They are also mixed in the Add mode. The result that is now visible could be obtained using a diffuse passage and a reflection passage. But the splitting of these passages gives greater flexibility and variability in the layout. Now it is necessary to mix two groups of layers, so the mixing node is added to the top node of the layer group. These passages are also mixed in the Add mode. Now I will add another group of layers and connect the refraction layer. In the same way, I will add the passage of radiation and under the surface scattering. All the passages are arranged. If we compare the result with the Beauty passage, then we see that it is the same. Let's see how you can change the resulting result using some of the features of the Octane Composer. In this video, I will not touch on the use of masks and working with light sources. This will be in the following videos. I will add a group of layers to the existing node tree and connect a layer with indirect reflection. I will set the mixing mode to Add. As you can see, this layer allows you to enhance the reflection on objects. To adjust the intensity of layers within one group, the opacity adjustment node is used. I will disable another group of layers with a layer of surrounding occlusion and set the overlay mode to multiply. This will allow you to add additional shading, which will give the image more contrast in places where light is blocked by other objects. For additional control, I will use the Curve node, which is similar to working with curves in other programs. It allows you to control shadows, midtones, and light areas of the image. I'll duplicate the nodes and add a shadow pass. It is also mixed in multiplication mode. This pass will also enhance the shadows on the image. In some areas of the image where there are reflective materials, you can see so-called hot pixels, unwanted bright points. Usually, the parameter in Camera Imager is used to eliminate them. However, this parameter not only helps to get rid of fireflies, but also reduces the image quality. To remove hot pixels, there is a corresponding node in the Octane Composer. It must be connected to all layer groups where the reflection pass is used. In this case, it will affect only the areas with reflections and will not affect the other areas in any way, which will preserve the image quality. The Color Effects section contains the usual set of color adjustments: saturation, hue, brightness, contrast, and so on. Using the Hue Adjustment node, I will change the color of the glowing diodes on the device. As you have noticed, to change a certain parameter, nodes are connected to the layer group in which a particular passage is located. To correct the entire image, nodes with effects must be connected directly to the output node, so that the action extends to all groups of layers below. I will slightly increase the saturation of the entire image using the Saturation node. Using the White Balance Adjustment node, I want to get an image in colder tones, simulating evening lighting. I will add the effect of chromatic operations and a vignette. Also, for fans of the workflow using Assist or IX, you can use the corresponding node in the Effects Display section. Slightly increase the brightness of the image. Now you can compare the result of the original pass and the result of post-processing. There are 4 cameras in the scene, and switching between them, you can immediately see the processed result. Thus, in real time, you can adjust the image parameters and get an infinite number of options, without having to change the parameters of materials, lighting, and rendering settings. To get another processing option, I will create another input slot in the output node of the AV group. I will switch to it in the Render AV output node and duplicate the entire node tree. I will change the white balance setting node, reduce the saturation, and add another layer with a swinette. I will increase the effect of chromatic operations. I'll add a node with sharpness settings. I added an image with a pattern of scratches and scuffs to the blender, imitating an old film. I want to add this image as the top layer to get even more imperfections in the final image. But before you add an image node, you need to stop rendering, otherwise you will be surprised. I will add a group of layers, since using this node will allow you to adjust the opacity of the image. As an overlay mode, I choose the multiplication mode and add a layer of opacity adjustment. As a result, we get another image processing option. It's time for rendering. After the visualization is completed, we get all the passes that were activated in the render, as well as 3 image variants: the original Beauty Groove and 2 processing variants of Octane Composite. In compositing, noise-canceling passages were used. Therefore, before saving the final image, you can perform noise reduction using a standard Blender noise canceller. After rendering from all 4 cameras, I got 12 images. Thus, the use of compositing inside the Octane render allows you to adjust various image parameters in real time, without changing the settings of materials, lighting, and rendering. This provides unlimited possibilities for editing your scenes. In the following videos, I'll talk about using masks to adjust individual objects and materials in a scene. And that's all for now.